Give me $200,000 or do not bother coming Sunday. My sister said that to me. Not a debt collector, not an ex, not some scammer who found my number online. My older sister, Vanessa Hart. By Sunday dinner, there would be 7 people in my parents' house. 6 of them believed they had a right to tell me what I owed my family. My mother, my father, Vanessa, her husband Evan, my Aunt Denise, Reverend Nathan Hales from Harvest Ridge Fellowship, invited by my mother to dress guilt up as faith, and then there was Pilar Bennett, the one person I was bringing because she knew the difference between love and pressure. By the time dessert hit the table, the person crying would not be me. My name is Camryn Doyle. I am 34 years old, a senior staff accountant at Horizon Freight Solutions outside Dayton, Ohio, and the worst mistake I made after winning a little over $824,000 after taxes was not buying the ticket. It was calling my mother first. I do not play the lottery. I want that on the record. I am the kind of woman who tracks every dollar, pays more than the minimum, and sleeps better when her financial life is boring. I live alone in Kettering in a second-floor apartment with beige carpet, one decent window, and a parking lot view that gets uglier every winter. I drive a 12-year-old Honda Civic that starts every time, which matters to me more than impressing anybody. I put money into my emergency fund every month, I contribute to my 401k, I carry exactly 1 credit card balance, and I pay more than the minimum on it every month because I like sleeping at night. What I do not like is chaos, especially financial chaos. That is probably why the ticket still feels absurd to me. $10 at the Speedway in Beaver Creek after a long Tuesday because the jackpot sign was glowing over the register and I was tired enough to think, why not? I shoved the ticket into my purse, bought gas, and forgot about it until Friday night. Then I checked the numbers. I checked them once on my phone, then again on my laptop, then I called the number on the Ohio lottery site because my hands had gone cold and I did not trust my own eyes. By the time I understood that my lump sum after taxes would land a little over $824,000, I was sitting on the edge of my couch with my purse still on my shoulder. I should have called a lawyer. I should have called a financial planner. I called my mother. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I could hear cabinet doors, then her voice shouting for my father. Russell called me back within 10 minutes, and his voice had a warmth I had not heard in months, maybe years. He told me life had finally handed me a break. He said I deserved it. Vanessa called after that, soft and syrupy, wanting to know every detail. Was I okay? Had I eaten? Had I told anybody else? I stood barefoot in my kitchen with the refrigerator door open, listening to my family sound happy for me. And for one stupid stretch of time, I let myself believe this was what being loved by them felt like. That was the expensive part. Judith called first the next morning, casual as can be. She mentioned the leak above the den, said she was not asking for anything, not really, only that it would be wonderful to finally fix it. Russell called after lunch and found a way to mention all the overtime he'd worked when we were kids. Vanessa texted me mid-afternoon and asked what the number was after taxes again, just so she understood what I was working with. Working with. That phrase sat wrong with me. By evening, all 3 of them had managed to circle the same point without saying it plainly. You have money now, we have needs. Family should not have to dance around family. That was not new. The money was new. The choreography was not. When Vanessa had split from Evan the first time, everybody moved like the world had cracked open under her feet. My mother slept on her couch for a week. My father hauled furniture. I covered what needed covering and never got asked twice because nobody saw me as someone you thanked, only someone you could count on. I was the stable one, the responsible one, the one who worked through college and mailed in loan payments while people told me how proud they were that I never caused trouble. That had always been the trick with me. If you survive quietly, people start thinking survival is your job. A month before all of this, I had met with Eric Landon at Landon Home Lending. Nothing formal, just an early conversation over documents and numbers and what I needed to clean up before I went for pre-approval. If I kept my debt low and my file clean for a few more months, he had told me we could start looking seriously. I had spent years thinking about a small bungalow in Belmont, not a forever house, just a front porch, a patch of grass, a kitchen where the cabinets belonged to me. I did not tell my family that part. Vanessa called again Friday night, and this time she stopped pretending. 200,000. I need it now. I went still. Need it for what? To keep my family from going under. That is not an answer. She laughed once, short and ugly. You have over 800 grand, Camryn. This is exactly what family is for. My hand tightened around the edge of the counter. Family is not a line item in my checking account. Her voice hardened. Do not do that. Do not turn this into some cold accountant thing. I am your sister. And I am not your bailout. Silence. Then, if that is your answer, do not bother coming Sunday. The call ended. My apartment went so quiet, I could hear the hum of the fridge and the blood in my ears. I set my phone down and opened my laptop, not because I was ready to fight, because I needed to breathe inside facts. I pulled up my credit profile, then the truck loan paperwork from 2 years earlier. My father's Ford F-150 was right there with my name tied to it. I opened the joint savings account I still shared with my mother at Miami Valley Community Credit Union, the one we had set up when she wanted help navigating online banking, and I had been dumb enough to think shared access was harmless if everyone meant well. Then, Eric Landon's email came through. He was following up on our conversation and reminding me, in the careful language of someone who did this for a living, that any significant debt movement, late payment exposure, or continuing co-signed obligation could affect my pre-approval timing. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. That was the moment it all snapped into focus. My family did not just want a piece of what I had won, they were standing in exactly the right places to damage everything I had spent years building if I refused to hand it over. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same 3 things. My name on my father's truck loan, my name on my mother's savings account, and Eric Landon's email sitting in my inbox like a polite little warning from the future. By morning, I had a headache and that thin, buzzing feeling under my skin that usually only showed up when I knew something bad was coming and had not decided yet whether to duck or brace for it. At 8:13, my phone lit up with a message from Reverend Nathan Hales. Judith told me there is some strain in the family. I am praying for wisdom and grace for all of you. Generosity inside a family can be a blessing when handled with humility. If you would like to talk, I am here. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone face down on the kitchen counter. That was fast. My mother had not even waited a full day before dragging God into it. It was not that I disliked Reverend Hales. He was the kind of pastor small churches seem to produce on purpose. Soft voice, careful smile, the sort of man who asked follow-up questions when older women told him about their arthritis. But that was what made the text worse. It was so measured, so reasonable on the surface. Family strain, grace, humility. My mother had already framed the story for him before I had spoken a word. I made coffee, opened the fridge, closed it again, then checked my phone. Vanessa had posted in the family Facebook group sometime after midnight. Some people get blessed and forget who sat with them when they had nothing. No names, no direct accusation. She didn't need one. Rhonda Kessler had already dropped a praying hands reaction. One of my cousins had clicked care, another had written, hate seeing families divided like this. I didn't answer. Not because I had nothing to say, because I could already see the trap. If I defended myself in that group, I would look defensive. If I stayed silent, she got to keep painting. Rhonda called 20 minutes later anyway. I let it ring once too long before answering. "Honey, I just wanted to check on you." That syrupy tone made my teeth hurt. "I'm fine." "Well, good. I know money can do funny things to people, and I would just hate for this to change your heart." My heart. I leaned against the counter and looked out at the parking lot. "Rhonda, if you called to ask what happened, ask what happened." A pause. Then, "Sweetheart, I don't want to get in the middle." "You already are." She exhaled in that wounded way people do when they want credit for being kind while repeating someone else's poison. "I'm only saying family remembers who shows up." When she hung up, I laughed once, sharp and humorless, because there it was again. Not what is true, not what is fair. Who shows up? As if I had not been showing up with checks, transfers, signatures, and all the boring adult things that keep roofs over heads and lights on. By 10, I was at Miami Valley Community Credit Union. The branch smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and old carpet. Sharon Bell came out from behind her office when I asked for her. She was in her early 60s, neat silver bob, glasses on a chain, the kind of woman who knew exactly where every form in the building lived. "Camryn, what can I do for you?" "I need to review a joint savings account I still share with my mother. I want to understand exactly what access is tied to it." Something in my face must have told her to skip the small talk. She nodded and led me into her office. We went through the account ownership, online access, beneficiary settings, linked services, all of it. Sharon never once asked me what happened, and I appreciated that more than I could say. She just laid out options with the calm precision of someone who had watched 1,000 family messes march through financial institutions wearing Sunday clothes. "If you think this may become contentious," she said, "I'd recommend you decide sooner rather than later how much separation you want." That landed harder than it should have. I signed nothing that morning. I was not ready to make moves without looking at the whole board. But walking out of that office, I understood something I had not fully let myself understand the night before. My life was tied to theirs in more places than emotion. Back home, I pulled everything up again. My credit report, the truck loan, my checking and savings, the little spreadsheet I had started for house costs in Belmont, estimated mortgage payment, property tax range, inspection buffer, first-year emergency maintenance. It all looked suddenly fragile. If my father missed payments on that truck, my debt picture changed. If my debt picture changed, pre-approval got harder. If pre-approval got harder, the little house with the crooked porch swing in Belmont turned back into some someday fantasy I was too practical to believe in. Every family emergency had always sounded the same. "We just need you to step in for a little bit. It's temporary. You know we'd do it for you." Then the emergency passed, and I went right back to being the dependable one. Not thanked in any lasting way, just folded again into the furniture of the family. Useful, familiar, easy to lean on. Around noon, my phone buzzed. "Evan, I'm sorry this got ugly." That was it. No explanation, no excuse for Vanessa, no request. Just one sentence from a man who had never once texted me directly in all the years he'd been married to my sister, unless it was about a birthday dinner or what kind of pie my mother wanted for Thanksgiving. I read it 3 times. Ugly was an odd word for him to choose. Ugly suggested he knew this had crossed a line. Ugly suggested maybe he had seen the line get crossed. I needed groceries, or at least I told myself I did. So I drove to Kroger in Beaver Creek and pushed a cart through produce I did not care about. Half the reason I went was to prove to myself I could still move through a normal Saturday. The other half was to see if the world looked different now that my family had started whispering. It did, just not in ways anyone could accuse. A woman from church was near the floral cooler. Usually she would stop and ask after my mother. This time, she gave me a quick, almost embarrassed smile and kept moving. Out in the parking lot, one of my neighbors from Kettering lifted a hand off his steering wheel in greeting, then seemed to think better of it. Nobody had done anything wrong. That was what made it so effective. Shame rarely arrives as a crowd. Most of the time, it arrives as hesitation. I was loading bags into my trunk when Vanessa's name flashed on my phone. I almost sent it to voicemail. Almost. Instead, I answered and heard breathing, light and uneven, and then Chloe. Aunt Cammy? My grip tightened on the bag handle. Hey, sweetheart. Are you still coming to my spring music thing next month? The question hit me so cleanly, it took a second to answer. Of course I am. Another little pause. Then, Mom said maybe you don't want our family anymore. Is that true? The parking lot went soft around the edges. No, baby, that is not true. Then why is Mom crying all the time? I closed my eyes. Across the lot, somebody pushed a cart into the metal return, and the bang of it rang through me. I love you, Chloe. That has nothing to do with grown-up problems. She was quiet long enough for me to know she was listening hard, the way kids do when they can feel the shape of something they do not understand. Okay. When the call ended, I stood there with one hand still on the trunk and my keys cutting into my palm. That was the moment everything changed. Vanessa had taken my mother, my father, my church, my extended family, and now she had taken her own 8-year-old daughter and turned her into a tool, not because Chloe understood any of it, because she did not. I got into my car, shut the door, and sat there. Evan's text was still on my screen above the family group post. Eric Landon's email sat unread in another tab of my mind. The truck loan, the account, the mortgage file, the prayerful language, the Facebook pity, the little girl asking if I still wanted her. This was not a fight over money anymore. This was a coordinated effort to shame me until opening my wallet felt easier than keeping my spine. I drove home with the radio off, the grocery bags still in the trunk, and the kind of focus that only shows up after something inside you finally hardens. By the time I got upstairs, I had stopped shaking. I kicked off my shoes, changed into an old Ohio State sweatshirt and leggings, made coffee even though it was too late in the day for coffee, and opened my laptop at my kitchen table. I told myself I was only going to look at a few things, a couple transfers, maybe enough to remind myself I was not crazy. What I actually did was open my banking history and start digging like an auditor with a deadline. This was not revenge. It did not feel dramatic. It felt clinical, almost dull at first. Statements, email confirmations, Zelle history, check images, memo lines, search terms, date ranges. I built a spreadsheet, because spreadsheets were the one language in my life that had never lied to me. I started with Vanessa. The first big transfer I found was from April of 2018, $19,200, split across 3 payments over 6 weeks. I still remembered that spring without wanting to. Vanessa and Evan had separated for the first time. She had called sobbing from a parking lot, saying she needed first and last month rent on a place in Fairborn, retainers for an attorney, and enough breathing room to keep Chloe in daycare without everybody knowing how bad things were. She had told me she would pay me back once she got steady. I found the text. I swear this is temporary. I'll make it right. I stared at it a second too long, then copied the amount into the spreadsheet. Next was my mother, December 2020, $12,840, medical and dental bills her insurance had not covered, a crown, some imaging, an outpatient procedure, then a payment plan that had turned ugly fast. My mother had cried on the phone then, too, embarrassed, telling me she hated asking. I had called the provider myself and paid what I could because I could not stand listening to that mix of panic and pride in her voice. In 2021, there was $8,930 that had gone out in pieces: county property taxes, a furnace replacement in January after theirs died in the cold, 2 emergency HVAC visits before that. At the time, my father had said it was just bad timing, one thing after another, and he did not want the house they'd lived in for 30 years to turn into a joke. In 2022, I found 6 months of rent for Vanessa again, $15,600 for a townhouse in Riverside after her second split from Evan. She had sworn it was different that time, that she was done, that she only needed a bridge. Then 2023, $7,450 in repairs, insurance catch-up, and short-term debt on my father's side, before I made the worst decision of that year and co-signed the truck loan because he had not qualified cleanly on his own. I still remembered sitting in the dealership office under fluorescent lights while he muttered that this was temporary, that once the old balance was gone, I could come off the paperwork. That had not happened. In 2024, there was my mother's knee replacement, $18,980 after rehab costs and follow-up care spread wider than anyone had planned. She had kissed my cheek and said I was a blessing. At the time, that had felt like enough. Then I found the payments from January and February of 2025, $11,670 sent to Vanessa over a few frantic weeks. She had called each one an emergency: utility shutoff, minimum payment, car insurance, something with a tax notice she claimed was a misunderstanding. I had covered them because the numbers were small enough individually to feel survivable. Together, they were not small. I typed the final formula and looked down when the total locked into place: $94,670. I sat back in my chair. That number did not make me angry right away. It made me sick. Because the truth was, I had never once thought of myself as someone being used. I had thought of myself as helping family through rough patches, one patch, then another, until apparently my adult life had become a series of financial triage missions everyone else treated like weather. My phone buzzed across the table. Denise. I answered on the second ring. You added it up, didn't you? I looked at the spreadsheet again. Yeah. What's the damage? $94,670. She let out a low breath. I'm not even surprised. That landed harder than if she had gasped. Denise did not waste words. She said Russell had borrowed from her years ago and never really acknowledged it after. She said Judith had a talent for turning any request into a test of character. She said people like my mother never came out and demanded. They arranged the emotional furniture until no felt like cruelty. Then she got very quiet and said the thing I needed most. You are not imagining this, Camryn. You are just the first one in that house who stopped cooperating with it. After we hung up, I called Pilar. She answered from what sounded like her car. Tell me you didn't send anyone money today. I almost laughed. No. Good. Start taking screenshots of everything. Every text, every post, every missed call if it matters. Save the Facebook group post before Vanessa deletes it. Print the transfers. Print the emails. Do not argue with them in writing, and do not pick up every call. I swiveled toward the printer, already opening folders. Done. And if Sunday happens, I'm coming with you. As my attorney? As your friend who also happens to know exactly how ugly family money fights get when no one in the room respects boundaries. I told her about Chloe. There was a beat of silence on the line. That changes it, she said. That means she's escalating because panic is setting in. Maybe. No, Camryn, maybe was yesterday. I printed until the tray ran hot. Statements, confirmations, screenshots, old texts I had not looked at in years. The stack grew into something I could hold. Around 6, I drove back out because I needed printer paper and I had forgotten milk. At the speedway near Beaver Creek, I saw Evan by pump 4 with his truck door open and his forehead pressed briefly against the roof, like he was trying to hold himself up. He spotted me before I could decide whether to leave. "Camryn." I stayed by my door. "You picked a great weekend to become chatty." He gave a tired huff that almost passed for a laugh. I deserve that. He looked rough. Not movie rough, not dramatic, just a man who had not been sleeping. "You really didn't know about Chloe calling me?" "No, I found out after. I told Vanessa she was out of line." "And that helped?" His jaw tightened. "I'm not defending her." "Then tell me why she needs $200,000. He looked past me, out toward the road where cars slid by in the dusk. "It's not one bill, it's a whole wall coming down." "What does that mean?" "It means she's not scared of one bad month, she's scared of everything showing at once." I waited, but he shook his head. "That's all I'm saying right now." My phone buzzed in my coat pocket before I could push him harder. "Dad." I answered. "Sunday, 5 o'clock, be there." That was it. A minute later, my mother texted, "Reverend Hales will join us. We need to handle this properly." Then Vanessa's message came through. "Bring a yes." I went home, slid the printed stack into a plain brown folder, and set it by my front door. Pilar called once more that night. "Let them talk first," she said. "People who don't have the truth usually say too much when they think they're winning." For the first time since I bought that ticket, I wasn't waiting to be understood. I was getting ready to be believed. Sunday at 5, my parents' driveway in Huber Heights looked exactly the way it had looked every holiday my entire life. Too many cars. My father's truck angled a little crooked, my mother's Buick tucked in too close to the garage, Evan's SUV near the curb, the porch light on even though the sun had not fully gone down yet. The house smelled like pot roast and green beans before I even stepped inside. That was the first thing that made my throat tighten, the normalcy of it. The ordinary Sunday dinner smell, the little TV in the living room talking softly to no one, the table already set with the good plates, as if this were just family being family. Pilar got out of the car beside me and adjusted the strap of her bag. "You ready?" "No," I said. "Let's go anyway." My mother opened the door before we knocked. Her eyes went to Pilar first and stayed there half a beat too long. "I didn't know you were bringing anyone." "I did not know I needed permission." Her mouth thinned, but she stepped aside. My father was already at the table. He did not stand. Vanessa sat 2 chairs down from him, hair blown out, lipstick done, posture perfect. She looked like a woman arriving for a charity luncheon, not someone who had threatened to throw her sister out of the family over money. Evan sat beside her with both hands around a water glass. Reverend Nathan Hales was near the end of the table, Bible nowhere in sight, just a nervous smile and a tie a little too tight at the collar. Denise sat across from him, quiet and still, like she was waiting for weather to break. Nobody had made a place for Pilar. She solved that by pulling a chair from the wall herself and setting it near me without a word. My mother carried the pot roast in and put it down in the center of the table. Her voice came out soft and wounded. I never wanted it to be like this. No one answered, so Reverend Hales cleared his throat. Families go through strain. That does not mean there is no grace left for them. Money has a way of making fear louder than love, and I would hate to see that happen here. My father leaned back in his chair, looked at me like I was a disappointing employee. "Your mother and I didn't raise you to count dollars over blood." Vanessa folded her hands. "This is not about greed, Camryn. This is about survival. I have a child. I have a family. You have been handed a blessing most people never see, and all anyone is asking is that you remember where you came from." I sat down and let them keep going. My mother dabbed at the corner of one eye, though she was not crying yet. "We are not talking about strangers. We are talking about your sister."
My father added, "You would not even have to miss it." That almost made me laugh, as if $200,000 were forgotten casserole dish I could bring back after work. Vanessa turned toward Pilar, then back to me. I didn't want it to become a whole thing. I wanted us to handle this privately, with dignity. I looked at her and thought, you already posted it on Facebook and dragged a pastor into it. Still, I said nothing. The silence started working on them. My father's fingers drummed once against the table. My mother shifted in her seat. Vanessa kept talking, because people without the truth usually do. I'm not asking for all of it. I'm asking for help. There's a difference. Families show up for each other. They don't sit back and watch each other drown. Only when she finally stopped did I reach down, pick up the brown folder from beside my chair, and place it between the bread basket and the casserole dish. Every eye in the room moved to it. "Before I open this," I said, "I have one question." No one interrupted. "Since I turned 18, can anyone at this table name one major financial milestone in my life you paid for? Tuition, rent, medical bills, a car, anything?" My father's jaw tightened. "That's not how family works." "No," I said, "apparently not." I opened the folder. The first page was the 2018 transfer to Vanessa, $19,200 over 6 weeks. First month's rent, last month's rent, legal retainer, utilities. I slid the printout toward her, then laid my phone beside it with the old text chain pulled up. "I swear this is temporary. I'll make it right." Vanessa looked at the text, then away. That was different. I pulled the next page, December 2020, $12,840 for mom's medical and dental expenses insurance didn't cover. The next, January 2021, property tax shortfall and furnace replacement, so dad and mom wouldn't spend winter with space heaters and a county notice taped to the door. My mother whispered, "Camryn." I kept going. Spring 2022, $15,600 for Vanessa's townhouse in Riverside after separation number 2. Summer 2023, $7,450 in repairs, insurance, and short-term debt before I co-signed Dad's Ford loan. Fall 2024, $18,980 for Mom's knee replacement and rehab. January and February of this year, $11,670 to help Vanessa get through what she called a rough couple of weeks. I looked at my sister. A rough couple of weeks that somehow kept happening. The room had gone so quiet I could hear the TV in the other room talk about weather. Then I laid the summary page flat on the table. $94,670. My father stared at it like the number itself had insulted him. My mother found her voice first. "Are you really doing this? Keeping score against your own family?" I met her eyes. "No, I never kept score. You all forced me to count." Reverend Hales picked up one of the pages nearest him and read it in silence. He took off his glasses, then put them back on. "Mrs. Doyle," he said quietly, "when you asked me to come, I was told your daughter had become cold and selfish about money. I was not told any of this." My mother looked at him like she had been betrayed. "Nathan, it's more complicated than that." He shook his head once. "Whatever else is true, I cannot use faith to pressure someone into continued financial exploitation. Camryn, I am sorry. I stepped into this without full knowledge, and I should not have." Vanessa sat forward so fast, her chair scraped. "This is humiliating. She brought paperwork to a family dinner like we're in court." Denise spoke for the first time. "No, honey. What's humiliating is asking the same woman to save you over and over until she finally has to print receipts to make you stop lying." My father snapped his head toward her. "Stay out of this." "I have stayed out of it for years," Denise said. "That's how we got here." Vanessa pressed a hand to her chest. "Those were gifts." Pilar leaned forward slightly, voice calm. A gift stops being a gift when refusal triggers threats, public shaming, and coordinated pressure. That is not generosity. That is coercion. Then she sat back and said nothing else. Vanessa turned to Evan, as if expecting backup. "What are you doing? Say something." He kept staring at the water in his glass for a second too long. When he finally looked up, he looked exhausted. "She doesn't need a little help," he said. "She's hiding $47,300 in revolving credit card debt. There's another $8,900 in tax and penalty notices she hasn't dealt with. She wanted $200,000 so no one here would ever know how bad it really is." Vanessa went white. "Evan," he kept going, voice low and flat. "I stayed quiet because I kept thinking she'd stop, that she'd tell the truth before it got this far. Then she used Chloe." That broke something in the room. Vanessa started crying for real, messy and immediate. My father shoved back from the table so hard his chair nearly tipped. My mother covered her mouth and made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not dramatic, just stunned and small. I closed the folder. "Tomorrow morning," I said, "I'm removing my name from Mom's account. I'm starting the process of getting off Dad's truck loan, however long that takes. There will be no more loans, no more emergency rescues, no more family obligations dressed up as moral tests. And if Chloe is ever used to pressure me again, I will cut off direct contact with Vanessa completely." No one argued. I stood. Pilar stood with me. Walking out of that house, I didn't feel victorious. I felt the way a room feels after you shut a window that has been rattling for years and realized the noise was never normal to begin with. Pilar drove behind me all the way back to Kettering, but neither of us called that night. There was nothing left to analyze. The truth had already been said out loud, and saying it had not made me feel bigger. It had just made the air around me quieter. The next morning, I was at Miami Valley Community Credit Union 5 minutes after they opened. Sharon Bell looked up when I walked in and gave me the same professional nod she had given me the day before. No pity, no curiosity, just calm. "You came back." I did. She led me into her office again, and this time I was ready to do more than ask questions. We went through every linked feature on the joint savings account with my mother. Online access, alerts, transfer permissions, legacy contact settings, the kind of details nobody thinks about until family stops acting like family. Sharon slid one form toward me, then another. "If you want clean separation, we'll document it cleanly." That sounded like mercy to me. It took less than an hour to remove what could be removed and start what needed to be changed. Nothing dramatic happened, no one tried to stop me, no hidden lockbox of betrayal opened under the desk. It was just signatures, confirmations, and the oddly steadying sound of a printer spitting out a receipt for a decision I should have made years ago. From there, I sat in my car and called about my father's truck loan. The woman on the line at the finance company sounded tired but kind. She explained exactly what I already suspected. A co-signer does not simply disappear because the relationship changes. Russell would have to refinance on his own or with another qualified signer. Depending on his credit and income, that could take time. Weeks, maybe months. There was no magic sentence I could say to erase my name from that contract. That should have discouraged me. Instead, it made me feel better. Real problems had real steps. I could work with that. By Wednesday, the family group post was gone. Vanessa did not mention it. She did not have to. Deleting it was its own kind of confession. Rhonda Kessler called me 2 days later with a very different voice than the one she had used before. "Camryn, I didn't know it had gotten that serious." That phrase almost made me smile. "Serious enough for you now." "Honey, I just meant if I'd known all that money had already gone that way, I never would have assumed I was the problem." She did not answer that.
I kept the conversation short, not because I wanted to punish her, because I was starting to understand how much peace lives inside not explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you until the evidence becomes embarrassing. On Sunday, I went to Harvest Ridge Fellowship alone and sat in the back.
Reverend Nathan Hales spoke that morning about generosity, not the polished kind people perform in public, but the kind that is freely given and therefore cannot be demanded. He never named me. He never named my family. He did not have to. When he said that love cannot survive long when it is used as leverage, I heard 3 women in front of me stop moving, all at once. After service, he caught me near the side exit. I am still sorry. I know. He lowered his voice. Sometimes people invite the church into a conflict because they think it gives them more authority. That does not mean we should let them. That was all. It was enough. A few days later, I got a voicemail from Eleanor. My grandmother's older sister had lived long enough to sound like history itself every time she spoke. Her message came in thin and shaky. Camryn, I listened to one side first, and I should not have. I am sorry for that. Your mother and I were raised to think keeping peace was the highest virtue. Sometimes all that means is the strongest person gets handed the heaviest load. I see that better now. I sat on my couch and listened to it twice. It is a strange thing when an apology arrives from the generation that helped build the very rules that hurt you. It does not fix what happened, but it settles something. The call from my mother came the following Friday. Her voice was tired, stripped down in a way I had not heard before. I hate this, Camryn. I know. I hate how everything feels now. I hate that nothing feels normal. I looked around my apartment, my folded laundry on the chair, my house listings open on the laptop, my own coffee cup in my own sink. I thought about what normal had meant in that family for years. Normal was me staying useful enough to be loved. Normal was me fixing things quietly so nobody had to confront how bad they were. Normal was Vanessa getting crisis after crisis and me getting praised for handling mine alone. I took a breath. The old normal only worked because I kept making myself smaller inside it. My mother did not speak for a second. Then, softly, I never wanted you to feel small. Maybe not, I said, but you got very comfortable when I did. She cried a little, not theatrically, not to steer me, just the tired crying of a woman standing in the wreckage of a system she once called family order. She still did not apologize clearly. I did not force her to. Some people tell the truth in complete sentences. Some only get as far as grief. Evan texted me in June. Chloe still asks about you. I sat with that for a full hour before answering. Tell her I think about her too. A month after that, he brought her by my apartment for 20 minutes on a Saturday afternoon. Vanessa knew where they were, she just chose not to acknowledge it. Chloe walked in carrying a coloring book and looked around like she was inspecting a museum exhibit. She hugged me with all the force of a kid who had been storing affection in a jar with the lid on too tight. By late summer, the mortgage path opened again. It was not instant, it was not neat. I sent documents to Eric Landon for weeks. I waited on underwriting updates. I watched my inbox like it was a pulse monitor. But in September, I closed on a little 2-bedroom bungalow in Belmont. The floors creaked, the kitchen needed paint, the bathroom tile was the exact wrong color of pink. It was perfect. The housewarming was small on purpose. Pilar brought a potted fern and a bottle of Pinot Noir. Denise brought baked ziti and dish towels with little blue stripes. Evan came by near the end with Chloe, who walked through the front room, then the hallway, then stopped at the empty second bedroom. Is this where I can sleep over one day? I knelt beside her. If you want it to be.
She nodded like we had just signed a serious agreement. A week later, I opened an Ohio College Advantage account and moved $25,000 into it for Chloe. No announcement, no family discussion, no performance. I did it because love offered freely still mattered to me. It just did not get to pass through the same hands anymore. My father never called. My mother still texted sometimes, usually about neutral things: the weather, a sale at Meijer, a cousin's surgery. She wrote like time itself might sand the edges off everything if she kept the conversation light enough. Vanessa sent one message in October that read more like self-pity than accountability. I did not answer it. I did not slam the door on the possibility that any of them might someday learn how to come to me without a demand hidden in the ask. I just stopped standing there waiting for it. One evening in early fall, I stood on my new front porch while Pilar and Denise talked in the kitchen behind me, and Chloe laughed from the spare room at something only 8-year-old girls find funny. The yard smelled like cut grass and cooling air, the kind of Ohio evening that makes everything feel briefly clean. That was when it hit me. Peace does not sound like winning. It sounds like nothing rattling anymore. If this story meant something to you, like, share, and subscribe. And if there was ever a moment in your life when you stopped shrinking just to make other people comfortable, tell me about it in the comments. I read more of those than you probably think.